So for this next part, we're going to get Andy to explain how it worked, because you are the guy who came up with this ingenious, totally stolen from Eurovision method. So explain.
It's more innovative than
Yeah.
Eurovision.
Mm.
And our songs were shorter as well. Okay, so we whittled the long list down to a short list of, I think, 60 games. 60, I think it was about 60 games.
Yeah, roughly.
So from that, Team CVG, that's in the UK and abroad. So it was a UK London team, our Bath team, our Australian team, our US team, and all of our major contributors voted in Eurovision style. For anyone who doesn't know how the Eurovision works, is we'd pick 10 games, and our top game would get 10 points. Our second favourite game would get 9 points. Our third would get 8 points, 7, 6, etc., etc. So from that, we compiled a definitive list of our top 20 games.
Right.
From there...
So basically 20 games were voted on, basically, out of those 60.
Well, we voted for all of the 60 games. We cast our votes from all of the net of CVG writers.
Right.
From there, we each had an additional 5 votes just for the lower half of the table.
Oh, right, because they're all on the same point.
So so we kind of, from our votes, we came up with a very definitive list of our top 20. It was very clear what our top 20 was, and no further votes would have changed that. The top 20, obviously, with everyone picking their favourites, wasn't so clear. So we had an additional round of voting
for the bottom 20,
the bottom 20 to arrange those.
And this
where
is
there were
truth.
ties, we arranged them with a CVG review score.
Oh,
there weren't many ties though, and I think the list that's come out is, you'll agree, is pretty solid.
Well, this is the honest truth. Andy hasn't told anyone.
None of us have seen the list.
Which is quite exciting for us.
Tamoor's seen the game in 40th place because he's staring at it
I'm looking at it now, so I'm going to be reading them off.
So you can explain how we're going to do this?
Yeah, so I'm going to read them off. They're all post-it notes, and on post-it notes, so I can go through one by one, and they're all marked with who voted for them. So for us...
Should we do a drum roll?
Stop
the table.
Merry Christmas.
All right, so we're going, yeah?
Christmas eatings.
Let's do it.
Christmas eatings.
Number 40 is Super Meat Boy.
What?
Yep. Which was voted on by Sean Prescott from our
Sydney office.
Sydney office. I love how you had to check.
Yeah.
I'm
trying to find it.
He is one of
He's written a very short explanation. He says, crack for anyone who grew up with the 90s console platform games.
I don't think we should approve of
and
crack.
It's we should be clear here as
No
well.
crack.
Even though it's in 40th place, out of our list of our favourite games of generation, that's almost 100 games didn't even make it that far.
All these
it's done
games
really well. I watched Indie Game the movie recently, and those guys that make it, they seem awesome.
They're really nice guys. I've met them. I met them when
it's a game that's bursting with personality as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just oozes it.
Yeah, I met them both when Super Meat Boy was originally meant to be coming to WiiWare, and Nintendo held a WiiWare kind of event and I met them there, and they're really nice guys. You could tell they're really passionate about the game. So yeah, I'm glad it's in here.
I'm glad as well. And it's an awesome platform game, isn't it? It's so nails hard, and it really is a game for like core gamers, isn't it? It's really focused.
I suppose with Christmas coming up, we could almost say it was season's meetings.
Oh, for crying out! Yes.
Thanks.
Chris is on a mission to put puns.
No, but it's not just me. Like, come on, let's just face it.
What do you think of the old Meat Boy, Tamoor?
I really, really like it. I enjoy. It's one of those games that I really enjoy watching other people play as much as playing it myself. So my younger brother's obviously he's only like 18 years old now, so he missed a lot of that classic arcadey kind of SNES era gaming and pre before that. So getting to see him discover that type of game for the first time, and then initially being slightly infuriated with it, coming away and going, I really want to go back and play that again, is like, it's like reliving it for me personally, and then playing it as well. It's just such a charming game as well. It starts with the Street Fighter knockout scene from Street Fighter 2. It's just charming top to bottom. It's an awesome game, and I think it deserves to be on our list.
Congrats.
Well, congratulations, Team Meat.
Yeah.
We don't have a trophy for you, but we'll send you a JPEG.
Right, so number 39 is FIFA 12. which was voted on by Scullion,
Yep.
Andy, and Tom.
Tom Ivanov.
Yeah, who's like our mystery voice.
Yeah, he does it. Well, we said in the main voting, the kind of the shortlist voting that, I think we all agreed that was the definitive FIFA. Yeah. It was the last kind of revolutionary installment. As if you would argue that a lot of the others were evolutionary, it did really shake up the format with the impact engine, and it changed the tackling. I seem to remember.
Yeah, it hit the kind of peak. That was the peak of the evolution, like you say, just before they started adding in new ideas that were a bit more. Not so much controversial, but arguably kind of weakened it a bit with the whole first touch thing and all that kind of split the fan base.
I wasn't so much into 13 and 14. I did feel like it was a bit more iterative.
It hit its peak and they were just messing about with it.
Certainly that was when they were going from strength to strength. Obviously they are now, but especially so when the new team was formed and they really started gunning for PES, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 12, you got the impression 12 was the peak, and everything since then has just been shuffling it about a bit.
Yeah, whatever. Next, number 38, PGR4, voted on by Chris Scullion.
Yeah.
Chris?
You'll notice that most of the ones I voted for are near the bottom of the list because of my tastes. No, I really enjoyed PGR4. All the Project Gotham games are great anyway.
Yeah.
But this was the kind of the peak for me when considering the added bikes, all the weather effects, the rain effects were unbelievable in that, and the fact that, as with the rest of the Project Gotham games, it rewarded you for how you raced rather than just simply finishing in first place.
Just out of interest, you're playing Forza 5 right now as well. How does Forza 5 compare to one of your favourite Xbox racing games?
Well, obviously it's more realistic, but it's not quite as enjoyable.
You mean in terms of graphical fidelity?
Yeah. Obviously Forza 5 destroys it purely because it's running on more powerful hardware, but it's lacking the sense of fun. There's a lot of sections, as with most realistic racing games, there are a lot of times where you're just almost kind of just going through the routine and just going through each lap without much. Whereas Project Gotham had you thinking about literally every turn because you were getting kudos for drifting round the turns and all this kind of stuff.
So it's almost like showering you with rewards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You were constantly trying to improve. Like, there were a million different ways you could improve your score around every lap.
Is it your favourite Bizarre Creations game?
Yes.
And it might be the definitive game.
Even the bikes were alright.
Yeah, the bikes were... And we famously don't like bikes and stuff like Mario Kart.
Controversial edition that was.
Yeah.
Was it really in terms of like the community? Were they?
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
But I don't think there's much arguing that it's definitive PGR, and certainly it's a crime that we don't see enough of that kind of racer anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly not at that caliber. You'd argue that Burnout Paradise maybe overtook it, and we shall see.
Yeah. And you also had stuff like Forza Horizon kind of carrying on its tradition, because that obviously had scored you on various different things rather than just finishing first.
I loved Forza Horizon.
Yeah.
I think it kept that spirit alive.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right, so next up, 37, Hotline Miami. This was one of my picks, and one of yours, Rob's.
Yes. Yeah. Just an amazing...
I'm just gonna throw it over to you because I know that you'll cover it.
Yeah.
Gav Murphy, who's also one of the CVG team video producer, he's a big fan of this game. He wears a badge with the chicken head on it every day.
Yeah,
which
I got him that badge.
And I'm pretty sure you can cover our enthusiasm for that game.
It's like, when you watch a movie and like an actor does something that's really cool, and it's so cool you won't even tell anyone that you think it's cool because you don't want people to know that you think a certain scene in a movie is cool. Like, I'm going to be honest here, and like throughout Hotline Miami, I thought every last thing about it was really cool. Like, and this sounds almost depraved, like wearing a pig mask and punching and kicking someone's face into a brick wall and just smashing people up with a baseball bat and just shooting people down, to like really awesome, cool music in a really sort of dirty, dingy environment. I thought was outrageously cool.
What are you trying to say, Rob?
Yeah. I'm going to shoot you motherfuckers up right now.
By the way, the installation menu wasn't very cool.
It's not very festive.
And I also love the fact that it was really, really, really hard as well. It was just like
It felt like an old school Bullfrog game almost, but super violent. Like it was a strategy. You had to think your next. It was like a game of chess, you know.
Yeah,
thinking
absolutely.
about which order you tackle the rooms and how you went about them. And
I think you're right. And like games have sort of become almost like. I think gamers are becoming mollycoddled these days, where like you have to have. Let's say you die so many times, you have like options to quit the game or to skip the scene or to get like invincibility outfits and shit. Whereas this game was just endlessly hard, and I just thought it was a real beautiful.
It's just every part of that is kind of iconic. It's designed to be iconic.
Yeah,
the music, the art style, the kind of emergent, embedded story, and everything about it is just awesome. Going into a level and figuring out the best way to go, and the way it kind of encourages you to use different weapons. And
plus it's really cool to beat people senseless in an urban dingy environment to loud dance music.
It's very hard to defend that game to the Daily Mail, because they could literally say, so you're basically killing everyone in this game for no apparent reason, and you go,
but
and you're trained to like it. Yes. And you
you
like
just
it?
say, like,
you could say that about most children's fairy tales though, couldn't you?
Well, I don't know what fairy tales you've been reading.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Is that a fairy tale?
What about
It is now.
Red Riding Hood?
Yeah.
Get eaten by a
Yeah.
wolf.
What about Rambo?
Jack and Jill fall down a hill and get absolutely decked.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
do.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
Humpty
They never
Dumpty gets done,
even said he was
well,
an egg.
if
he was
you
actually
return
a man.
to the original roots of these fairy tales and fables, they're actually a lot more sinister than you. I think like
So anyway,
Jack and Jill went up the hill to.
It's Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
What about them that went to the gingerbread house? They chucked that woman in the oven.
I think she was a witch though, so she deserved to be in that oven.
Well, they called her a witch. It wasn't nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't Goldilocks like burgle some bears?
Yeah.
She
as well?
kicked those
All right,
bears'
all right,
faces off.
I don't know what. Okay.
Moving
It's
on,
true.
number 36, Just Cause 2.
Nice.
Chris, over to you.
Yep. That's all I've got.
it.
No, Just Cause 2 is
agree.
excellent. I'd said before that it's there's been so many open world games this generation, but that was one of the few where I genuinely enjoyed not bothering with the missions and just pissing around. Basically, the smooth, like seamless transitions between driving, running about, flying, floating, hang gliding, everything was just unbelievable. The fact that you could just seamlessly, if you fancy doing something, if you could see it, you could reach it. You just think, oh, I fancy flying that plane that's flying overhead, so I'll just shoot a grappling hook, swing up to it and jump in. That's unbelievable.
Have you,
Badass.
by any chance, has anyone got the PC version?
Yeah.
Are you gonna get the multiplayer mod? And
I might do. It's not big on. I'm not big on Just Cause 2. It's a great game. Sean Prescott really likes it. He said it's an excellent sandbox, and he didn't even get a quarter of the way through the campaign. He just boots it up when he feels like jumping from cliffs.
that's cool.
So
when you still feeling happy when he wants to jump off cliffs?
Oh yeah, I think he
in a
enjoys
good
the rush
mood.
of it.
Yeah.
I imagine he jumps them off because he's then got his little parachute, right?
Yeah,
He's
Yeah,
got-
exactly.
Absolutely.
He's got a tiny little
There's no
parachute.
death after.
He has a
Do you know,
lustful
I
life.
also actually in the North Pole, Santa is the only person there who enjoys the game. Just Claus. Right, now, moving on,
we are
moving
going
on.
to be removing Chris momentarily.
Well,
Don't worry.
Yeah.
That was good.
All right, number 35. Number 35.
Go on.
Saints Row the Third. I really like
You
this
voted for
game.
this, right?
Yeah, I voted for this, and the other person was Connor from the US, and he says the oddly specific genre of open world crime game justifies its existence through the Saints' irreverent adventures, which I agree with. It's just
Couldn't have put it better myself.
it doesn't care about. It doesn't take itself seriously at all, which is exactly what I want from a game in that genre now. Like Grand Theft Auto 4. After Grand Theft Auto 4, I'll probably catch a lot of heat for this, but I thought Grand Theft Auto 4 was one of the most boring games I've ever played.
Oh, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. You know, I mean, certainly it segregated the audience, and it showed that a lot of people just want to piss about. I mean, our tech manager here at CVG, I think he put in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into every GTA game, and you look at his mission complete percentage, and it'll be like 1%.
Yeah.
But he just wants to mess about in a great sandbox.
Yeah.
GTA 4 wasn't about that.
No.
it left some of that behind, and Saints Row and Volition really, went in and exploited that. Some people just want something a bit daft and fun.
And
but other people want the authenticity, and they want to live in a world.
It's the personality that really, really, really sells it. It's just like they put in anything fun that they could think of. It's in there. Like one of the character voices is just zombie. So throughout every single cutscene, whenever that guy speaks, all he says is blah, 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 and it will put in subtitles what he's actually saying. And it's just amazing things like that make it so much fun and distinguish it from Grand Theft Auto. Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? I don't think we'd ever anticipated Volition would have developed one of the best games of the generation when they were showing off Saints Row the Third, but they really have come into their own.
Yeah, definitely.
That series.
Yep.
Right. Next, at number 34 is Crackdown, which OXM's editor John Hicks championed, and also Chris Scullion.
Yeah, Crackdown. I remember we had the big fight about what was it, Crackdown versus
Infamous.
And Crackdown.
I'm still bitter about that.
It wasn't a big fight. There was just this annoying noise in the everything we just said about Saints Row, really.
Yeah.
Just I don't think I've had more fun in a sandbox game, any sandbox game this generation. It's so funny how everyone just bought that game to get the Halo 3 beta access, and you ended up with this gem, and it wouldn't have been, arguably wouldn't have been as much of a success as it was without that. And I hope they make another one. I'm sure there's, lots and lots of other people out there who are thinking the same.
Yeah, Crackdown was one of the first games of what was then next gen that I looked at and said that I've just done something I've never done before. Because obviously the first batch of 360 games, much like the first batch of Xbox One games, could have passed as previous gen games, but it just looked better. But this was like a year or so after, wasn't it? And that was when the first kind of proper next gen stuff came out. And there's a section where you could stand on the kind of motorway that goes over on a bridge, and you could stand on that from a distance and aim directly at the wheel of a truck, shoot the front wheel, and it would just spin. It would turn and spin into a roll. And I saw that and thought, I've never done that before.
There's no other game. It's still one of the only games that has such a sense of place and height and vertigo. Like getting to the top of a building is a real 3D puzzle in that game. There's a sense of achievement when you get to what's the name of the big police building in the middle?
The
something plaza?
Agency building?
Yeah, the agency building. When you get to the top of that, I think there's an achievement. In the second one, there's an achievement for jumping in a giant toilet, isn't there? From there. Like, that takes proper skill. I mean, obviously you need to upgrade all of your abilities. And it's also one of the first games that of the generation which kicked off the co-op craze. I mean, it's silly to think now that it's a thing. It's just something that people come to expect from their games. They want to be able to play co-op, but that wasn't the case with PS2 and Xbox the original Xbox. But Crackdown showed a different way to play. You don't have to be competitive, and you can be a bit rubbish at games and still play with your friends. And that game, it's just a joy to play, as you say. Like the size and scope of the world as well. You could hear like faint explosions in the distance of your friend, like causing mayhem. And
Crackdown. Even though I voted against it with Infamous, it's responsible for one of my funniest moments in this generation of gaming. And it incorporates everything Andy just said there. I was playing it co-op with one of my friends. We were trying to get to the top of that tower to get the achievement. I got to the top, and I watched him slowly get right near the top, and then I fired a rocket at the floor, and it sent him flying across the city, and he was so angry. He was so angry. And meanwhile, I laughed so much that I had to put the controller down and step away.
Awesome game.
Number 33, Bayonetta.
Ooh.
That was voted
Bayonetta,
for.
only 33. Wow.
Yeah, Chris Schilling, contributor to CVG, was one of the guys that stood up for that game, as was I. It's been, I think, although Platinum Games has had a lot of games, a big output this generation, I don't think all of it is as good as Bayonetta. They kind of came out with that. That was the game that put them on the map, I think, as an independent developer. And it's just such a technical, outrageous game in terms of what it can do. I always liken it to something like Street Fighter in the way it feels and the way the mechanics are. It's not limited in it. It feels like it shouldn't work. And it's similar to how Street Fighter was. Like, you know how people always talk about the combo system is built from a bug or a glitch or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Similarly, that game is broken. The
It's
mechanics
when
are
you say broken, you mean it's about exploits and.
As in, yeah, it's so open ended that people have just done the most insane things with it, and it's just a weird Japanese game to play. Like it's so the girly aesthetic is it's overwhelming. Like it's got like fancy like crazy music, and it's got this woman who's just. Her clothes are made of hair that come off and form into these giant fists. And it's just such a weird, madcap Japanese game. But at the same time, it's just so technical and satisfying to play.
It's a game that demonstrates so many qualities that have become very rare during this generation.
Yeah.
I mean, not least a really great technical AAA game from a Japanese developer.
It's also packed with extremely nerdy Sega references.
Yeah, I was
going
to say it's a real love letter to Sega fans. It was like Outrun 2, Outrun 1 music.
During the entire sequence of the game. It's just such a brilliant game. It's just so fun to play. And if you're the kind of like mechanics nerd, you know that there are a lot of like me. That game is just so rewarding to you to really delve into and figure out. Yeah.
Awesome.
Next, 32. Deus Ex Human Revolution.
This one almost didn't make it through to the
shortlist. I can't believe it. Nearly,
but clearly a lot of people have love for it because I think a majority of the people who voted gave it something, gave it points, and that's why it's
sneaking
crawled
around
up the list.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people have a lot of love for it. I mean,
Sean Prescott
the
likes
aesthetic and I adore the soundtrack. I love the art style. As I said in the voting stage or in the shortlist voting stage, I feel that it would have been a better game if they gave it another year, and I hope the next one is getting the cooking construction time that it deserves, because I think the last third of the game drops off a bit, but it's bloody brilliant to see that they actually managed to revive such a cherished franchise, and also they brought a lot of technical PC qualities that have kind of died off a bit as in the console games have become very much the domain for AAA. But they're back, choice and the skill trees didn't hold back in terms of their scope. And
I can't explain why it felt like a PC game. Does that make sense? That there was something about it that felt like you were playing.
It lets you fiddle with the nuts and bolts of how you kind of develop your character, and it lets you do stupid things like it'll hide a vent behind a giant refrigerator, which you can pick up only if you've gone this far down the skill tree, and if you haven't, you pretty much can't do it. That's completely closed off to you.
Right.
So
also, I think it was just missing a tiny layer of polish. As well, which tiny bit raw. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's also impressive how great it ended up being, considering Warren Spector wasn't involved. I mean, that was a massive, not so much a gamble, but things could have went drastically wrong there because so many people associate
quite a lot, didn't they?
Yeah, but it's the fact that people used to associate him with Deus Ex, like the two were almost inseparable.
Well, it's Harvey Smith as well, right?
But the fact that he maybe didn't have as much of a role with this one. A lot of people at first were thinking.
But he also did he have a role in the second one, which was Toilet? Super
sure,
fans will tell me that in the comments. I don't know if Warren was involved in the second one.
Was it developed by Ion Storm, the second one?
I'm not even sure.
I think so. Yeah.
And let's not forget Epic Mickey.
I've erased that sequel from my memory.
Okay.
Sean Prescott loved the game. He said it was the most immersive cyberpunk universe in a video game, and even the boss battles didn't ruin it for him.
Oh right, you like the boss battles? I didn't mind the boss battles. I know there's a bit of
I didn't mind them, but I like how in old school games and to a lesser extent MMOs, you just like cheapskate your way through a boss battle.
Yeah.
So I swear I beat most of them by like standing on the top of a shelf and, like,
and they can't see you
at
anymore.
them with a knife or something until they die because they're so bloody overpowered.
I remember one of my boss battles was just a mad dash for as many grenades I could find and just indiscriminately throw them in the direction that you think the boss is in, and eventually I won. Excellent.
We're now at the business end, aren't we?
Number 31.
Oh right, we're approaching business.
Batman
Rob starts
Arkham
his
City.
at 31.
Batman Arkham City, which I'm disappointed isn't higher in this list.
Wow.
Should have voted for it then, shouldn't
I did.
Huge,
that was
game.
one of my top games this generation. I just think, if you think about it, we've gone a long time without a good superhero game,
You
or
know what?
someone
You know
doing
what?
justice to any superhero. Forget Batman, and these guys did it twice.
Superman 64.
Shut up, you. Yeah, you're going to say something?
I said, you know what? You look at the games above this, it's in a really bloody strong list. And even the games that didn't make it are a bloody strong list.
Yeah.
It's a huge honour for us to vote Batman Arkham City our 31st best game of the generation.
Of the generation, yeah. And Rocksteady just absolutely nailed it. Like, as a Batman fan, you go into, when you hear something like someone is creating a game, Rocksteady, Urban Reign, or whatever the hell they are doing before that, it's like you expect failure, you expect the worst. And as a huge Batman fan, I thought this is definitely going to be a stinker. And then when Asylum came out, I was absolutely stunned. And then when this came out, I was just like, I wanted to cry with happiness.
I think there's not much revolutionary about City. It's just that it's wonderfully, beautifully created, crafted.
Definitely.
Just the amount of imagination that's this goes for Asylum as well, that's consistent throughout the whole game. It's Nintendo-esque.
I'm so glad you said that, because it reminds me of Zelda. And I actually played Arkham City the same time I played Skyward Sword. And I honestly started thinking that Rocksteady were bettering Nintendo at Zelda templates.
Yeah.
This was an adventure around a community that you were part of, where you could fly anywhere and you could go anywhere and you could do anything essentially. And I just thought, I think in so many ways it's gone a direction that Zelda should be going in.
Feels like a game designed by a developer that's just so full of confidence. They don't think twice about we'll stick a playable Catwoman in it. We'll stick this villain and that villain, and we'll make this happen. And it sounds like it's all ideas from the drawing board that usually most projects end up chucking out, or we haven't got time. They just lob it all in, and they do it with flair and imagination.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys will remember this bit. It was a Catwoman scene in the game. You're in a prison, an icy prison, I think it is. You're basically running up to this fence, and you just dive underneath it, and then you fight about 40 henchmen. And I hope some of our listeners know this section, because you fight about 40 henchmen on hard, and it felt like Burly Brawl in The Matrix Reloaded. It really, honestly did. I felt like a maverick just fighting all those people.
And just
it did. I felt I was just like taking out tens upon tens of soldiers, and they, at any point they could punch me and I would fall to the floor. But I was jumping and doing some Neo shit on them the whole time. I could talk about
that game for hours, but I think it's really important to remember that they nailed the combat so well to the point where everyone is doing it now. They set that. I think they set that blueprint, and it was finally like they figured out how they could have multiple people attacking a character instead of just lining up one by one, and they did it so well. And it takes someone really, really smart, really, really like impressive,
brave
to create a universe, a Batman universe so good that DC itself has spun it off into an actual comic series. It's one of the most popular comic series currently out there. It was when it came out. The whole line of Arkham City comics. Right, okay. It's like it was incredible, and it got received. Was the game the inspiration for? Yeah, they did spin-offs to fill in different parts of the storyline, and it sold really well. I read them and I enjoyed them, and at the same time they pulled in stuff from revered like Batman universes, like the animated series and all kinds of other stuff. But yeah,
I agree with you about the combat being that good that it'll be imitated quite. It seems to be the combat in Batman is this generation's God of War combat, basically. That for the next few years you're going to see a lot of games copying the reversal.
I don't think other developers copy it enough.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know it's a bad thing.
But they go halfway, right? I mean, Assassin's Creed has still been kind of like tiptoeing around the edges.
Yeah, just nick it.
Now. Yeah, they should just steal
nick it, then
just
nick
say,
it.
Yeah, we think it's great.
I mean, Rise
it'd be a better game.
Rise nicks it pretty blatantly, but the problem is it also nicks God of War's quick time events as well. So it kind of steals them both and tries to merge them together, and it's a bit of a mess.
And it falls.
Yeah, nice. Offset Rise is good. Very good.
Right, we are now in
number
business end.
Bam, bam, bam.
Speaking of Zelda, Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess.
Oh,
it's
great.
that game that you played at the same time as the last
No,
one.
that was Skyward
So anyway,
Sword.
get yourself out of this hole, right?
No, that was Skyward Sword.
Oh, Skyward Sword. I beg your
Yeah.
pardon. I'll be silent for the rest of this.
Andy, Chris
Silent Night.
Scullion, you two were the big advocates.
I think it's a really, really underrated Zelda. I think if you take A Link Between Worlds out of the equation, which does not count in this particular vote because it's a handheld game, I think Twilight Princess is the best Zelda game of the last 10 years.
Boom.
Post N64, the best 3D Zelda of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got the best dungeons of any 3D Zelda on top of that as well. They just got better and better and better. I mean, it's got a very slow opening. Everyone critiques that. Once you get into the meat of it, the items, the dual hook shots, and the cog thing that you're riding in the desert from wall to wall, and then you're in there's a dungeon set in one of the definitive Zelda moments for me was there's a dungeon set in like a Yeti's ice house.
Yeah.
And you're halfway through the dungeon and you have a revelation where you're like, shit, I'm in a dungeon? You don't realise that they because it throws away the convention. It's not like, ice dungeon.
Yeah. Here's your map.
Here's some, oh, you've got a map.
Yeah.
Oh, here's some torches to light. Like you realise, shit, I'm actually in a dungeon here. This is not like, I'm not just in an environment that leads to a dungeon.
Yeah.
Great game.
I never understood why it got such backlash. I mean, at the time, a lot of people were cold on it, but a lot of those people nowadays seem to have kind of realised.
I think in hindsight, it probably hurt a little bit that
it was on
they
GameCube.
pigeonholed in some of the Wii controls. I mean, the aiming was great,
so,
but it just wasn't fully realised.
You have to remember it was released at a time when everyone was talking about motion control as the great new frontier for video games, and this was not a good motion control game.
Well, the aiming was good.
Yeah.
The pointer aiming was good.
Yeah,
it's just the
fair
sword
enough.
stuff was just like
So
waggle,
was just
wasn't it?
it's waggle
waggle
instead of pressing a button. And I think like it felt like a conventional game at the time. And then as time went on and people realised actually motion control is boring and inaccurate.
Yeah.
It
I think there might be an element of fans being a bit bitter that they're taking this idea of motion control, which seems to be invented to court the casual developer, and tying it with a franchise that is so hardcore, and of fearing that that's where the future of it will go. And
you can't take the pointer aiming out of Zelda now. That's a great innovation that they'll never, and they haven't gone back on. Every 3D Zelda since, including the 3DS ones, have had the pointer aiming because the gyroscopes. You know, it was the waggle stuff. I guess
they'll do that on the Wii U version. Then use the gamepad.
Great. Oh yeah, they use it in Wind Waker HD.
Right.
Great game.
Yeah.
Yep. Number 29, Minecraft Xbox 360 edition.
What?
Scullion's not a fan of Minecraft, but he doesn't like Lego either.
No, you can all piss off.
So he can clear off.
Yeah.
Minecraft has changed so many different lives, but also let's not forget it's a really beautiful, fun game where you can do anything you want. The first thing I did on Minecraft was I looked down, I started hitting the floor, and I'm a bit of a Neanderthal, so I started just pushing down into the ground, and I was digging a hole, and I thought, let's see how far this can go, and I was going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until I was sort of nearly surrounded by magma, and then I decided to start building, and I built a one unit tower until I was touching the clouds. And just so immediately in the first 10 minutes of Minecraft, I realised the astounding potential of the game. And my God, if you just hand that game to someone, they will happily play it for 2, 3, 4 hours and be like, I've just made a castle.
I mean, it's a cultural revolution as well, isn't it? The whole generation of gamers out there that have been introduced to our pastime through Minecraft, and it's a beautiful demonstration as well to the mainstream about what games can be about. I mean, obviously, it's far from the only example of this, but just for its huge popularity, it can be, a demonstration that games are not all 18 rated shooters and and stuff like that.
The biggest games aren't just 18 rated shooters, because this sold over 30 million across console and PC. And
I think it's really important to just say again how big the impact of Minecraft is on a cultural scale. Like in the same way that kids used to sit down to watch cartoons and stuff like that. My younger brother, who plays Minecraft, one of his weekly traditions is to sit down and watch a group of guys, the Rooster Teeth guys, play Minecraft
My nephew
with
does
each
that
other.
as well, yeah. Just sits
and
watch.
obviously I
it's
take an interest.
fascinating.
It's just amazing to watch that stuff happen.
Awesome.
And it's just like those guys have an entire community built around that one weekly Minecraft segment, and it's basically one of the pillars of their business model. In the same way that, for example, other websites will do like a charity event, they'll hold it in Minecraft where everyone gets together. And it was like, for example, GameSpot did a charity thing and 24-hour for the kids, all that kind of business. And they went away and came back, and by the time they came back, like 3 or 4 hours later, this community had come together to build a hospital in the game.
That's
and it
awesome.
had a working helipad and swimming pools and all this other kinds of crazy
How
stuff.
does a helipad work?
I don't know.
Yeah.
As long as it's solid.
Yeah.
So
As long as it's got
flat.
a giant H on it, it
So
works.
just to clarify, people actually watch YouTube videos
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people making things. Is that like the modern equivalent of like Art Attack when Neil Buchanan
Maybe,
putting
yeah, I
things
guess
on?
so.
Oh my
It's
God, yeah,
fascinating
it
to
is.
think
It
where
is,
these kids will be taken by their experiences with Minecraft as well. I mean, what they're learning about architecture and teamwork and stuff like that. I mean, that you can buy books like for kids, like Minecraft books in on the high street here. That just have lists of things to build and how you build them.
That's a great idea for a book.
And they showed that Charlie Brooker thing recently, and there's that moment.
That's
where
games, most important games of all time on Channel 4.
And Minecraft
right?
was one of them. And there was a point where a kid was like, "I built this, and then it's an elevator," and then he goes, "And then I made it work." Which is essentially, I used physics and engineering to make this a real elevator.
Yeah, that's
which is incredible.
Yeah.
Number 28, Trials Evolution.
Nice.
Voted
Super
on
fun
by
game.
John Hicks of OXM and Tom Ivan, CVG. And I
voted for it as well.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome game.
Yeah.
I mean, that probably didn't have as big a cultural impact as it deserves. I'll be fascinated to see where the series goes with subsequent entries, because it really is a brilliant game, and there's a lot of people out there that aren't traditional gamers that absolutely love Trials. It's a game of physics, right?
That's right.
God damn, it's hard as well.
Yeah.
And it can be social. As we were talking about Minecraft, watching videos, like watching someone who's really good at Trials finish a Now's level without dying once is fascinating.
Yeah, it's mental.
Absolutely. And also I think we've all grown up with games for maybe more than 20 years. In some cases lots more than 20 years, and just when we start playing games, we could just turn something on, it'll be on straight away. And these days you have to sort of clear your diary in order to play the latest big game. Yeah. There was something about Trials HD which meant you could jump in so quickly. And I mean to gameplay. Getting to a track, it was just near instant, and it just felt great.
Yeah, because there was a period when it came out, I'd put the dinner on and have a couple of races while waiting for it. There's no way you could. Well, you could do it with some other games, but that was the one. That was my game of choice, to get a couple of.
It's another one of those games.
That's actually really interesting. Actually, so you actually, whilst waiting for a download, got in.
No, waiting for my dinner. We'd play Trials.
He was downloading his dinner.
Downloading your dinner.
I was.
What did you have?
Microchips.
That was all right.
That's strike two.
No, that was the first good fun.
That was a good one. You having that?
Trials is another one of those games which the YouTube community has rallied around. It's similar, not on the same level as Minecraft, but it's like you see weekly trial shows all the time, and it's just hilarious to watch.
For the next one, they need to have a consistent soundtrack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Some of it's so disparate. Some of it's awesome, and then the rest of it is the most atrocious butt rock you've ever.
Well, Ubisoft own Red Lynx, the developer of it now, so I imagine we're going to get more and more and more and more and more and more Trials games until we stop liking it. I imagine that's how it's going to work.
Well, they've got two coming on the way, don't they?
Yeah.
I think it's a slight time because Joe Danger, who make
Hello Games,
who make Joe Danger, which is like an inferior version of Trials. It is. It's like the embrace to Red Lynx's Blur. Like they. Sorry, it's a 90s band
I got it.
reference. Thank you.
I hope Danny from Embrace isn't listening.
Yeah, I hope he's not crying.
Yeah.
But they've instead gone off the rails and just making No Man's Sky now. They're doing something completely different. And, maybe Red Lynx should try and do something different. I think they perfected that game itself.
If you heard of a developer called Massive Entertainment, who were very famous for making an RTS called World in Conflict.
Yeah.
They're now making a game called The Division, which is possibly one of the biggest games of next year. So there's every chance that they will be rewarded for their good work on Trials with an original project. It seems to be the culture within Ubisoft that they
I mean,
about this
with
stuff.
respect, I disagree. I think they've bought Red Lynx because they wanted that brand.
Well, either way, that studio, that team, whenever you see them talking about their game, you can see they're genuinely passionate about it, and that's because the community currently is so supporting of them. And their track creator in Trials 2 was excellent.
Yeah, some of the stuff
you see is just mind blowing.
It was like Pac-Man levels and stuff that didn't even look like Trials. It's bizarre.
Some of the stuff is just crazy. So I mean, as long as the fans keep being as enthusiastic as they are, we can at least expect another good Trials game. So yeah, look forward to the future of Trials. Number 27, Street Fighter 4. Super Street Fighter 4.
Oh my god, only 27?
No, it's a good place to be.
27th
best game
of
of
Oh my
generation.
god.
Again, I personally...
Oh my god, I'm actually devastated.
Why? Did you
Because
vote
it should
for
be in the top 10. Oh my god, it
Did
should
you
be in the
vote for
top 5. Yeah, I think I voted for like...
It was my second most loved game of this generation. In terms of pure hours, I can't even imagine how much hours I've put into that game. It has to be over 1,000.
I think it's like saying Forza Motorsport 4 deserves to be in the top 10. It's
No.
It's the definitive genre entry of its time.
No way.
In any way does it define this generation?
This redefined 3D gaming. It re-established Street Fighter as a leading franchise.
Yeah. Right.
I see what you're
in
saying.
The same way that Mortal Kombat did, or it's
No,
just the definitive genre entry in a very old and established.
You're looking at it
It's
from
the best fighting game of the last 20 years.
You are looking at it.
Is that enough
No,
to put
it's
it in the top 10?
not. The last
Yes,
20
it is.
years.
Yeah, of course it is.
That game,
Balls
it
out.
basically, like before League of Legends, before Dota 2, before all these other Counter-Strike, that game, it became so closely knitted with esports esports as we know it would not be what it is without Street Fighter. I think Evo became
Street Fighter
huge.
4,
Street Fighter 4. I'm talking about Street Fighter 4. Third Strike. After Third Strike, the fighting game genre essentially died. It was dead.
Street Fighter kind of went underground.
Street Fighter was gone.
3.
It was
a
Street
real
Fighter
niche
3
game.
was not playable for the masses. You still had in the years in between, you still had stuff like Mortal Kombat. You still had stuff like Dead or Alive. You still had the occasional other fighting game.
Tekken.
But as a fighting game player, I can tell you, those were there just to cash in on money. That's how I feel. They weren't quality. Like, none of those Mortal Kombat 3D games were very good at all. In the same way, Dead or Alive wasn't all that good. Virtua Fighter showed up now and then. It wasn't all that good. Street Fighter came back and did 2.5D. It took that traditional one-on-one 2D fighting game plane and put it in 3D, and it created the current framework for fighting games. It's the same framework that Mortal Kombat is now cashing in on. It's the same framework that brings it revolutionized and it revitalized like indie fighting games. Stuff like Skullgirls wouldn't exist, BlazBlue wouldn't exist. All these other fighting games that were niche for a while Street Fighter was gone could come to the forefront again. And it's just like such an easy game to play, from like casual level to hardcore, technical fighter. It's such an easy game to play, and it looks so nice. And it's just, when you played Street Fighter 4 for the first time, the nostalgia trip was incredible for people who played it back in the day.
I'm going to be devil's advocate and put it to you that Street Fighter died when they got rid of the guy who did the announcing in Street Fighter 2 Turbo and replaced him with a sap in Super Street Fighter 2.
The guy who came back in Street Fighter 4, the original, he was okay. He talks more.
Let's not forget that Street Fighter 4 adds so much to the series.
What did
as
he
well.
say? What did the Street
adds
Fighter 4
really
guy
interesting
say?
new characters, adds amazing ultras as well. Like these ultras you kind of want
the
to see.
cinema to it, exactly. And
if you haven't noticed, these guys really like Street Fighter.
What was the Street Fighter 4 announcer? What was his patter?
what was his patter?
Yeah, what were the kind of things did he say?
He talked about axioms and all this other business. He was
Yeah,
crazy.
Is it about to explode?
And that was Street Fighter 3.
Oh no, that's right. That was Capcom.
But it's like it introduced mechanics as well now, like the focus attack dash cancel, which is
a really fantastic evolution.
It's just like we want to give people who want to play it on a casual level something that will keep them going, but we want to give hardcore players something that will really they can dig into and figure out and mess with the systems of. And it's just such a good game.
Who's your favorite character, Tom?
It varies
Ken.
from time to time. Like, I started off. Everyone starts off playing as Ken because they know that's his guy. But then I graduated.
It'd be interesting to see as we go
Seth.
up this list if there are many games that you think are significantly worse than Street Fighter 4.
You know what? On my personal list, it's much higher. But Street Fighter 4, I'm just happy to see it in the top 30 of this generation. I think
I'm slightly devastated that it's not in the top.
That's
10.
based on personal, but it's good where it is. I'm happy with it. I'm happy it's on the list. There are a lot of games that didn't even make this list. So, yeah.
So Merry Christmas to all a street fight. You having that? That's a decent one.
I don't even
know the words that you replaced there.
And to all a good night. You don't know that one?
No.
The street doesn't even sound like.
Well, it does. That's not even a pun. That's not even a pun. You've just said street fight.
As opposed to good night. That's the pun.
Yeah, but you can't keep on. You can't pun 2 words.
You can. you actually can. Fucking get the next one on.
Number 26, The Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Better than Street Fighter.
That's better than Street Fighter.
It's not better than Street Fighter. Yeah. Nothing's better than Street Fighter.
They didn't have a mechanic where professional players can like stop their sword moves halfway through. I think Daniel Dawkins actually put it quite elegantly when he voted for it. He says, okay, so it popularised PC MMO tropes, but no console game has ever so completely, utterly immersed you in its universe, every minute drip-feeding stats, weapons, and narrative threads. So no two players enjoyed the same experience. And that's what, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Bethesda games, but that's what always fascinates me about them is the anecdotes and the sort of emergent experiences that everyone has. And I always come back to one of our previous editors talking like furiously in a pub about how he threw his like 200 hours in Oblivion down the bin because like he saved his game in the middle of day in like a field and he got bit by a vampire and he couldn't get indoors quick enough. Just bonkers. I mean, I never personally got into them, but that always made me want to get into them.
Yeah. I enjoyed Skyrim quite a bit, and I spent so much time even just figuring out how to break the system. Like, once everyone figured out you could like use this weird glitch where you collect certain items and mess with the time, and you could very quickly forge the best armor in the game. It still took you like 20 hours, not 20 hours, like 5-6 hours of solid play to do it. But I did it and I had so much fun doing it because it's just like after that I went out into the open world. I was basically unstoppable because I had the best weapons. I just went around caves killing enemies and, you know, using these, experiencing these smaller storylines within the grander, like dragons are trying to kill us storyline. It was just a fun world to be in for a really long time.
If you've never played one before, like I haven't, should I start with Oblivion or should I?
No. I'd go to Skyrim. Oblivion's a much more difficult game. Like you start off going into an Oblivion gate, through Oblivion gate, and everything in there will kill the shit out of you.
Yeah, I love how relentless it is in that regard. You can just go into a town and like rob someone, and then you'll be on their shit list for life.
Yeah.
So I want to play
back to that town.
They give you the stink eye every time they see
I want to
you.
play Skyrim, but I'm scared to because I know I'll be obsessed with it.
Same here.
Considering I was obsessed with Two Worlds, and that's atrocious.
I can confirm Two Worlds is not on this list.
Yes.
Unfortunately, if only wildcards existed, Two Worlds would be right up there.
Right, number 25, Geometry Wars.
Ooh.
Andy, that's a big one for you, as it is for John Hicks.
It was the first great game of this generation if you don't include... Well, I suppose, no, the 360 came out before the Wii, didn't it? So it was the first great game of this generation. And I'm not including Perfect Dark Zero. Geometry Wars was the definitive launch game on Xbox 360. Everyone loved it. And you did actually see a spur of... evolved retro games from that, right? I mean, so many people were starting to reinvent the old tropes with the power of the new consoles. It's a beautiful game. I wish there was another one. I bet Microsoft wish there was another one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird because like although the generation before that had twin sticks, it was the introduction of Xbox Live Arcade which made it kind of okay to have twin stick shooters. And say, you're allowed to have kind of basic old arcade style games, and they don't have to be 40-hour epics with big storylines. You can just have a really simple.
There are probably
thing.
a lot of games out there that owe a lot to Geometry Wars, and the stamp it made in kind of cementing Xbox Live Arcade as a success.
Especially when you consider everything else that was on that came out on Xbox Live shortly after it, was just stuff like Smash TV, and there was a couple of other twin stick shooters which weren't anywhere near as good. And if Geometry Wars hadn't been so successful, you wonder if XBLA as a whole would have taken off or could have gone the way of the indie games.
Yeah, certainly. If all there was to show for it was,
old Midway games,
Midway ports.
Yeah.
There's games that we've already mentioned on this list that I would say have aged just a little bit at the very least. But with Geometry Wars, if I gave you it now,
I'd play it for an hour.
Yeah.
play for an hour, and you'd
it
have the
looked-
time of your life.
It's because it looked aged already. It
Yeah.
looked like an old game. So when you look at it now, and you don't.
Are you a fan of Super Smash TV by any chance?
Yeah.
I was.
It just reminded me of that.
That has aged badly, I think.
Oh right, okay, fair enough. But it reminded me of that, and that relentless, being surrounded by enemies.
I'm currently playing through Resogun, and I play it every day. Every time I turn my PS4 on, the first thing I go to is Resogun.
Yeah.
And I love Resogun. I'm playing it, enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But in the back of my mind, there's a little voice that keeps saying, "This is not Geometry Wars."
Yeah, same.
Geometry
Exactly. I get exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that game is incredible. So addictive.
Yeah.
Number 24, Burnout Paradise.
Oh wow.
Chris
Burnout.
and
Yeah.
Rob.
It's the best. It's the best arcade racer ever. They've still not topped it.
No.
I mean, Need for Speed has tried to top it 6 times now. Criterion have tried to top it.
Yep.
It's the best arcade racer ever.
I know. I would say it's generation defining. The whole online connected experience as
Mingle
well.
player.
Mingle player. Yeah.
Which is officially the buzzword of the next generation.
Yeah. It was a mingle player game before the mingle player generation.
Yeah, before Dark Souls did it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was shockingly beautiful. And what I loved about it was that there were open world elements in the game that did work successfully. So if you were going down, say, the downtown part of the city and you went past a load of signs, you would go, oh, okay, I haven't smashed through that sign. I've got 250 to smash through. That's the last one or something, And it just kept you gripped the whole time. Really brave as well to not give you a race select screen. You actually had to drive to the racetrack itself and thereby learn more and more and more about the routes that you're going through.
And I think people did respect it a lot more once Criterion's subsequent Need for Speed came out and tried to ape it, and you realise just how well designed Paradise City was. It's fun to drive around. There's no traffic crashing into every time you go over 100 miles per hour. The jumps are perfectly placed. It is just a perfect driving playground.
Why do you think EA never released a sequel? And is it their biggest mistake?
Well, because Need for Speed is a better brand.
Right.
So I'm guessing they were hoping to have the best of both worlds, but for whatever reason, they've not quite managed it. I mean, there's still some really great Need for Speed games that have come out since, but they're just not quite. There's something missing that Burnout, was once in a generation breakthrough for that genre.
I wonder if Criterion even wants to do it. I mean, that's that game and that franchise now. The last entry is so good that it has this prestige in the racing genre.
And let's
now.
not forget, the Burnout series was going a bit.
Yeah, and they put that out, and you'll forever remember that game and that franchise as being one of the best racing games ever.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
I remember when a few years ago I got a call from PR.
Someone going to die in this story?
No. It's good. No.
Are you sitting down?
Yeah. No, I got a call from PR asking if it's saying Suda 51's in town in London. Do you want to go out for dinner? And I said, okay, for no reason. So I went out and I was saying, what are you even doing in Britain? You've got no games to promote, nothing.
Yeah.
He said that I wanted to come and visit. I had a few days off between games. I wanted to come and visit Criterion because I'm a massive fan of Burnout.
Oh,
and it was literally over to Britain just so he could visit Criterion and speak to them. And
what
that was
a poor man.
I know.
He's come all the way over to visit Guildford.
Yeah. And I like to think it was more to visit me, but they just used Burnout as a mule.
Right.
But no, it was.
But great game.
Oh, good game. It was sort of 51.
There's a very somber ending to that.
It was. Thousands died.
Still waiting for. I'm still waiting. Speaking of thousands of dead, number 23, Fallout 3.
Oh, great
Of
game.
you're up.
Yeah. I've already said I'm very scared of Skyrim. The reason why I'm scared of Skyrim is because I played this game. One of my friends insisted that I played it, and this whole idea of a character evolving with you and you sort of building them up over time, I found that just astoundingly intoxicating. I just fell in love with that game instantly, and because it was so open and so expansive, there was just so much to do. But I was enjoying every last bit of it because you were developing that character. I guess I'm just describing RPGs, but that's what I loved about it.
That was another one of those games where, like Deus Ex, a lot of people thought, surely they can't pull this off. This is a classic PC franchise, and it's top-down strategy game. Surely they can't pull this off as a first-person. Remember that uproar when they said this is going to be a first-person shooter, essentially? And when they pulled it off, they brought that world and realized it so comprehensively. It was just incredible. Like I spent hours and hours and hours in a world which is essentially designed to be as depressing as possible, and found every facet of it fascinating.
Yeah, that's
like right, so good. And the kind of
just the little things, you know, when you go into a supermarket and you see those looters and
the weird stuff as well, like the alien blaster and that kind of thing. And I think that was the one that had the weird door to paradise with the tree in it, and there's just like an area where it's just a hole in the ground. It's basically like a hole into middle of nowhere, like space, Oblivion or whatever.
Oh my God, do you remember that scene as well where that guy is pretending to be a little girl? Help me out here. You're like in a sort of sleeping pod and you're like...
I just can't even... It gets mingled with like other different games and you're in a VR segment.
It's in a VR segment and it's like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you slowly realise
like
you're in a
weird
nightmare.
Americana area.
And you can
have to figure out
you can change it by pressing certain parts in the world, and oh my God, that was
an
just
awesome moment.
Yeah, and this is a game that is packed with those awesome moments.
Connor Sheridan from the US team said, "I adore the idea of Elder Scrolls, but I couldn't get interested in the fantasy world. The radioactive ruins of retro futuristic America, on the other hand, he loved." And Sean Prescott also liked it quite a bit. He said, like a great apocalyptic novel turned into a video game. It's refreshing to play an immersive 3D RPG that isn't set in a fairyland.
Great. Yeah.
Well said, Sean.
Yeah, well said,
Good job, Sean.
He's won the argument there.
Number 22, looking directly at Andy, Mario Kart Wii.
Yeah!
I can't believe.
It's a shame it missed the top 20.
Can't believe.
After the controversy in the shortlist voting,
madness.
It turns out lots of people like Mario Kart.
Yeah, pick it out.
We should make logos that say better than Street Fighter.
Yeah, Mario Kart is better than Street Fighter official.
I have to say, that's that. I think that speaks more for the accessibility and love for Mario Kart than it does.
The quality
I
of Mario
think there's
Kart
going to be
itself.
a lot of people who strongly disagree with the placement of Street Fighter versus Mario Kart there.
Good.
Even
take up arms, friends.
Even I don't think it's the best Mario Kart. It's not best Mario Kart. It's
just the best one this generation.
It's just
the only one.
Yeah, well,
it's also the best-selling game of all time. Solace. Best-selling game of all time.
Not bundled with a console. I think it pretty much is.
Yeah, it goes Wii Sports,
Super Mario Brothers,
then Tetris, and then this. And Mario Kart Wii is the only one of those four that wasn't bundled with a console. So it's the best-selling game of all time.
Well, it was, but not
until later.
Not until a lot later. Yeah.
What do you mean?
It was bundled.
There were bundles for it later.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, but not. It wasn't like there wasn't a lengthy period where that was the only way you could get the game.
But it does have Street Fighter-esque qualities. I mean, it doesn't offer.
Shoot me in the face.
I love being able to finish a sentence.
Sorry,
because my next sentence was before everyone started sniggering. It doesn't offer anywhere near as much depth. But you could argue that casual players can play it, and you can play it competitively, as we pointed out before, was demonstrated when we did all 32 tracks on a live stream, and me and Tom basically wrapped them all up. You can be good, you can have strategy, but obviously a lot of it is designed to take that out and make it accessible as possible. A lot of the items are a bit cheap, and my relatives who don't play games, they would happily play Mario Kart for hours with their silly Wii wheels.
Fair enough. I totally agree with that.
Kart. Yeah, best-selling game of all time.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I will say this. I mean, you can play it with like about 7 different controllers or something crazy like that, and they all of them work really well.
Yeah.
So I guess it must be pretty good. I guess
if any game is going to turn around the Wii U's fortunes, it's got to be Mario Kart 8,
Street Fighter
9 even.
Well, only if people know it exists.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So market that game, Nintendo.
But we're digressing.
Yeah.
Number 21, Dark Souls. another game which I think is gonna define the next generation.
Oh, absolutely,
as much as it does.
absolutely. Mingle player.
It's
what it's about.
Yeah.
There's I think as the generation has evolved as well, there's been a transition from a lot of people who are up for sitting in lobbies, and I mean I remember my online existence on consoles has evolved dramatically from on the original Xbox when I was prepared to sit in lobbies and play with strangers, and then on Xbox 360 it evolved to, because you would have a more accessible friend list at all times, it evolved more into a more social thing where you play with your real friends. Now, like, you know, it's difficult to track down real friends just because of, as you talked about before, a lot of people don't have time today to play through 100-hour games, especially, and then find friends and
Imagine
coordinate your kind
trying
of lives
to do that.
together.
Yeah.
So the next step is just having these elements subtly placed into your solo experience, whether they're online or not. I mean, the perfect example, you see the driver tars on Forza at the moment. What a great way to be able to play with your friends at any hour, whether they're on or not.
Yeah, that's right. I'm surprised Dark Souls wasn't higher. Yeah. Because I think what you think
21, 21st best game of the generation. That's pretty high.
No,
especially considering how it's relatively...
it's a
still
niche title.
Relatively niche, yeah,
exactly. And Sean was one of the guys that voted for it. He said it's the most despairing atmosphere I've ever experienced in a game. Difficulty should not be the talking point for Dark Souls. Its subtle take on cooperative and PvP play is already reverberating into the next gen, and I agree.
Wow.
It's been
that Sean knows his games, doesn't he?
Deep.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where I still haven't completed it. I played every moment of that game live on the internet. So I streamed it for the good people that wanted to watch on CVG, and you can go back and watch it. Like this year, it's not one of those YouTubers faking like a fear at the, just so people can enjoy it. Every corner was terrifying to me. Like you don't know what's going to be around the next corner.
I love how they were actively trolling you.
Yeah, and they were like actively trying. It's like I was at this vital moment in that game, and they were like, "All right, what you need to do is go to this area over here." Went to the area, climbed this tower full of perilous traps. Like one step wrong and I was a dead man. And I got all the way to the top and I was like, oh, that's weird. There seems to be a giant nest here. And they go, yeah, that's what you're here for. You need to go in there and sit down. I was like, okay then, this is about 20 hours into the game. Went in there, sit down. A bird came, picked me up and put me at the start of the game. That was it. I was like, what the fuck? And the thing is, like, over time, I realized the ramifications of that weren't as big as I thought. Yeah. But for that moment, for that hour or two, I was just like livid. And at the same time, it was just like, I couldn't help but laugh at how...
Such a genius mechanic that you can leave, advice for other players in the game, but it doesn't have to be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow. And it's just like, it's one of the scariest games I've ever played. It's one of the most, like, your skill level needs to be so high, and your execution and thought and perseverance, and it needs to be perfect. And it's one of those games where it reminds me of like a classic like 90s era game or something, where it tells you nothing. You figure this out yourself. You drop in there. This game will kill you at every opportunity. We're not going to tell you anything about the world, anything about what you need to do. You just go figure it out. I remember talking to like a bunch of guys at OXM and stuff. They started a WhatsApp group where it was like AA counseling for these guys. They would go in there and they would discuss this is happening and then this is happening. What do I do here? And they try and figure out theories. And at the same time, it's like... Everyone says, there's people that say there's no story in Dark Souls. There is definitely a story in Dark Souls. You have to piece it together. You have to figure it out. And if you go online, there's an entire wikis about how this one aspect of a wall here relates to this thing that happened time ago. And people have built this world around the game from the ground up, using clues and bits of lore in the game. I think it's just like one of the best games ever.
Wow. That is remarkably high praise.
Generation. Yeah, so Dark Souls, well done for being...
It ends the 20s.
The 21st best game of the... Yeah, that's where we stop.
Yep.
Wow. Street Fighter.
Deal with it.